And today's episode of Today in World War II, January 15th, the British blackout is killing more people than enemy action. The RAF bombs Wilhelmshaven and Emden in northern Germany. Uh, German U-boats continue to make hay on the East Coast against unconvoyed, unprotected, lit up merchant vessels off the East Coast. The British start using crossword puzzles to help find future cryptologists in the war against the German Enigma codes. Sadly, the United States inadvertently sinks a Japanese ship full of Dutch POWs. The Germans over in Western Europe make large-scale arrests of Danish Resistance members, and finally, in a very well publicized attack featured on HBO, 101st Airborne attacks and captures Foy, Belgium. Let's get started. Okay, so in January 15, 1940, this is about, let's see, September, October, November, December. So about 4.5 months into the war, the British government did a study that revealed that twice as many people had been killed on British roads as had been killed by enemy action, and the blackout was the main reason. I would also like to point out that if you travel in the British countryside, even now, you see some of these roads, they're like single width roads, and you've got traffic going on both sides. I think there's a lot of people who are dying from traffic accidents from how narrow those roads were anyway. But of course, having the blackout made it even worse. So yeah, that was interesting. But I think this was a little bit of a premature uh, study because okay, so 1940. By the end of 1940, you're going to find that when the German Blitz started and they started doing wide scale night bombing against British cities, people are going to forget about how many people were dying from the blackout because that would be dwarfed. But this was the beginning of the war. It was a phony war, and that was still making headlines. Uh, the headline that I want you to make right now is for you to excuse me, not like, but subscribe to my channel and click on the little bell that will make sure that you get notified whenever I drop a new video. That way you're in my club and you'll know exactly when I drop a new video so you can watch it at your convenience and get all this wonderful content I'm giving you. I suspect I'm giving you a lot of information that you don't know about, even though you may be as big of a World War II nerd as I am. Okay? So on January 15th, 1941, the RAF made a pretty big scaled raid against two northern German cities, Wilhelmshaven and Emden. Now, Wilhelmshaven, as you may or may not know, and will continue to be a big U-boat base, a big German naval base. Of course, by now in 41, mostly German U-boats had moved to Norway and France because that gave them easy access to the North Sea and the Arctic Ocean for the Russian convoys, and obviously from France directly into the Atlantic. But there was still a very significant naval base there, and so this was the RAF fighting back the best way they could. They still were not able to mount consistent 1,000 plane raids, which was their goal, which did happen, not that far along in the future. But for right now, what were the Brits doing? They fought in North Africa on land. They were fighting the good fight on sea against the U-boats, against the in the Mediterranean, against the Italian and German surface units, and RAF was taking it to them as best they could. So good for them. What's also good for you would be to like my video. See, right now, just take a quick break. Just go down below where you see the thumbs up and thumbs down. Just go ahead and click that thumbs up. Leave a quick comment. Say, hey, good job done. Hey, I like your video. And that will help the algorithm show my stuff to more people because really I want to expand my reach. And this is the best way you can help me. And it doesn't cost you a dime. All right, sad note here, January 15th, 1942, the last couple of days, and in the last couple of videos I've done, I have showed and I mean examples of the disastrous decision made by that obtuse, arrogant piece of crap U.S. admiral who refused to force these these merchant vessels to convoy boy, all this traffic that was going past the East Coast from the Gulf, Caribbean, up the Gulf Stream, past Florida, South Carolina, the Carolinas, Virginia, New Jersey, New York, and so on and so forth. Still, at this late stage of the war, started in 1939, for heaven's sake, the Germans were still able to pick off these lone vessels one by one. And on these dates, they sank four or five merchant vessels, four or five different U-boats were just making hay, enjoying themselves, killing sailors, taking out vital supplies. They're supposed to be heading to Europe for no reason whatsoever. I'm not saying they wouldn't have sunk any of them, but they would have sunk far less. And so forgive me if I decide to move on because even now, I mean, I was not born then at the time, but it enrages me as an American to think about how stupid that decision was. Okay. So, speaking of the opposite of stupid, in fact, ingenious, in January 15th, 1942, the British Secret Service decided they needed to recruit more people to be cryptologists at Bletchley Park. You remember their main battle there, the nerd battle, was to break these German codes from the Enigma machine, and they need to recruit more people. But how do you do that? How do you recruit really, really smart people? Well, they decided that they were going to stage competitions for people to solve the Daily Telegraph crossword puzzles, and they wanted to find people that could solve the crossword puzzle within 12 minutes. Those that did were invited back for an interview, and that got them into the process, into the funnel, if you want to call it that, to get them recruited and working as cryptologists in that massive effort to decode the German codes. And boy, I tell you what, that was ingenious. The Brits, they were pretty darn smart. On January 15th, 1943, very tragic thing that happened too many times in the Pacific, but unfortunately, it's just collateral damage. B-24 liberators, they attacked a Japanese convoy off of Burma. The Japanese did not mark the ships as having POWs, and the American pilots did not know that this ship that was sunk, the Nichime Maru, had 1,000 Dutch POWs, and it was just awful. So, I mean, what can you say? It's just I'm reporting the news, and I hate that these things have to happen, but this was a world war, and this stuff happened, you know. Speaking of stuff happening that's very bad, on January 15th, 1944, the Germans made large-scale arrests of Danish resistance members. This was interesting. Denmark was a fascinating case of resistance to the Germans because the German policy when they invaded in 40 was they felt like the Danes were their Aryan brothers. They did not feel they were subhuman. And so they kind of treated them with kid gloves for the first couple of years. They grew more and more frustrated by the fact that the Danes continued to resist, and they were not welcoming the Germans with open arms. There wasn't a lot of wide-scale sabotage or stuff like that happening at the beginning, but what really made the Germans mad was earlier, and I cover this in a video later, is that the Danish resistance helped get the majority of the Danish Jews out of Denmark into Sweden. And that was very well, you can imagine what the Nazis felt about that. And so they decided they were going to come down on the Danish resistance, and so they made massive arrests on this day. And we'll see later how the Allies did their best to try to help free a lot of those agents. That'll be in a later video, though. Okay, and then finally, for those of you who watched Band of Brothers, the HBO series about the 101st Airborne and its history in World War II, they did one episode on, actually, they did two episodes on Foy. One was where they were talking about the losses they took as they were waiting to attack Foy from German artillery and so forth. And then the second one was the actual attack on Foy. On this date, January 15th, 1945, the 506th Parachute Infantry Regiment that was attached to the 101st Airborne, they attacked Foy. You can watch the video. I watched the episode. It's dramatized, of course, but it gives you a good idea what that was like. Unfortunately, that poor uh, inept American lieutenant, even though he's long gone, he lives in infamy as being a dipshit officer commanding the Easy Company. But it was they attacked and they were able to capture it. And again, that was part of Eisenhower's stupid policy of pushing the bulge back instead of cutting it off and decapitating the head and destroying the pocket. That was Patton's idea. Eisenhower had different ideas. He should have kept. I mean, MacArthur once said that Eisenhower was the best clerk he ever had. As a military strategist, that pretty much sums it up for Eisenhower. Well, that sums up this video for today. Thank you for being here. I can't wait to show you another one tomorrow. See you then.